Hey, what is up, Party Chat Sports? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back, Jets fans, as we get ready to regain our off-season championship, baby. It's the one thing that we actually can win around these parts. But that is what this focus of today's episode is going to be. Free agency. I'm recording this Sunday. This is either going to go up Sunday, Monday morning. But the tampering period starts at noon on Monday, March 10th. So I did want to get some sort of off-season plan together for you as I try thinking about the best path moving forward for this New York Jets franchise. We're not going to solve all the Jets' problems here today. We're simply just not. There's so many that we need to address, quarterback being one. We're not competing in 2025. I do hate to break that to you. But we do need to start setting ourselves up for 2026 and beyond. Which is why I've outlined before that, just need to get rid of Aaron Rodgers. Like, there's some things that just, the plan has to be for 2026 and beyond. And there's some free agency moves that I think can help get us to that point. Before we can sign people, there's got to be some subtractions. And some of those have already been announced. So, Davante Adams, Aaron Rodgers, Allen Lazard, the Green Bay Jets, or New York Packers, however you want to phrase that, they're not coming back. A lot of those guys that came over because of Rodgers will not be on the 2025 New York Jets team, and that's for the good. That's for the best, if we're being quite frank. It was time to cut bait. The one thing that really does suck, I'm more bummed out about Davante Adams not returning than I am Aaron Rodgers. Because Davante Adams still has juice in the tank. And him and Garrett Wilson could have been deadly duo together. I understand why they're getting rid of Davante Adams just as money made it difficult, his connection with Aaron Rodgers. But that was one that, if you were to keep anybody that they're probably going to cut, Davante Adams would have made the most sense. Now you're getting rid of Allen Lazard. And suddenly you're looking at a big hole. A glaring need at wide receiver. Even though PFF doesn't have wide receiver as a need on the mock draft simulator, it's a need. It really is. Because next to Garrett Wilson, who do you have? The next best guy is Malachi Corley or Xavier Gibson. Two unproven guys. Maybe Malachi Corley can develop, but we haven't seen anything to date that suggests that. So there's holes there. Quarterback, like I already said. On the defensive side, the defensive line, it needs to be rebuilt. Next to Quinn Williams, you really don't have anybody else to help stuff the run. Like, Jermaine Johnson coming off of an Achilles injury, but he's an edge rusher. Even though he's like a run-stuffing edge rusher or a run defender, he's still an edge rusher. Will McDonald, edge rusher. You really don't have a lot of bodies up there, so you need to rebuild the defensive line that Joe Douglas gutted. Linebacker, there's question marks. C.J. Mosley. Is he going to be around? Jamie Sherwood. Every day, it seems less and less likely that he comes back. Jamie Sherwood, especially with these other linebacker contracts that have been signed, if I'm Sherwood's agent, I'm telling him to test the market to see what I can get. The Jets probably will not give him the most bang for his buck. Like, the Jets are not going to overpay for Sherwood, I wouldn't think. When you have teams like the Broncos, the Falcons, the 49ers, they're all going to be in the mix for one reason or another. I mean, Falcons and 49ers make sense alone just because of the Albrecht and Saleh connections there. They're the guys that got Sherwood essentially in a spot to be a big money contract getter. So, if I'm Sherwood, I would want to go back to one of them. I would. It sucks because now there's a hole at linebacker for us. So there's holes that need to be filled. Safety. Gosh, I believe every safety on the roster is pretty much a free agent. Ashton Davis, Chuck Clark, Tony Adams. They need help at safety. So the first thing I'm going to lay out is who's gone? Who is out of here? All right. And then we're going to talk about the signings. Talk about the signings. it's not going to be a big splash free agency. It's just not. The Jets are not in the spot to do that. They'll make a few good moves, I think, but they're not going to be getting... I mean, who's a top free agent on the market? They're not going to go out and get, like, a Sam Darnold. Well, first of all, Sam Darnold wouldn't come back here anyways. Josh Sweat, Chris Godwin, Nick Bolton just re-signed with the Chiefs. So, like, and this isn't a great free agency class either. There's not a lot of quality free agents. A lot of teams are keeping their own guys. Which means that the guys that do hit the market are just going to be drastically overpaid anyways, which is usually what happens. So, the guys from the Jets that are going to hit the market: Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams. Like I already mentioned, those are for sure happening. It's just a matter of when. I think CJ Mosley does get cut. They let him... They could use his leadership, but he is getting towards the end of his career. It's probably best for him to try going to a contender if he does have any more juice left in the tank. And honestly, CJ Mosley might just retire. Alan Lazard mentioned he's gone. He will be. Greg Zuerlein, I'd cut him. Go reinvest in kicker. And then, I mean, just out of common decency to us fans that have suffered watching Michael Clemens on this team, cut bait. He's not a Jet. He's not what Aaron Glenn is going to preach. Like, he's lazy. Point blank. Like, he is a liability out there. So, cut bait with him and let him walk. The guys I would bring back that are currently free agents are Brandon Echols, because there is a need for corner on the other side of Sauce if Echols is gone. I think with DJ Reed's going to test the market, DJ Reed's going to get a good contract elsewhere, as he should. The Jets should not overspend in corner, I don't think, because you're going to have the Sauce contract coming up here soon. I mean, honestly, I'd extend Sauce. I'd look into extending Sauce and Garrett Wilson this year, because those contract numbers are just going to continue to balloon. So you bring Brandon Echols back, who is a solid corner when he's out there. Maybe you draft a guy, Quantez Stiggers, who they drafted last year, a different regime, but was drafted by the Jets last year. Let him compete with Brandon Echols and see if you can make that work. You're hoping that with the assets that have been put into edge, if you're fixing up the defensive line, that will help the corners. Corner is not as big of a need if you bring Brandon Echols back. Safety is, which is why even though they're not the greatest players, you still need depth back there. You need bodies. At the very least, you need bodies. So I'd consider bringing back Ashtyn Davis and Chuck Clark just as bodies, camp bodies at a minimum. Let them compete. Let them. We need safety. We need somebody back there. Who else is it going to be? And then you draft, you sign different guys, but I would definitely consider bringing those two back simply to have a body on the roster in those spots. And then the biggest re-signing I would do is Morgan Moses. If you bring back Morgan Moses, you have your starting five solidified. There's no doubts on who the starting five is, and it's a good starting five. Is it great? It's not the top of the league, but it's still serviceable, at a minimum. And it will be more attractive for a guy like Justin Fields to come here if there is that right tackle. Because that's the hole right now on the offensive line. Left tackle through right guard is filled. It is. Morgan Moses being a free agent. Now, I wouldn't blame him if he decided, you know what, I only have another year or two. Kind of like CJ Mosley, where you only have a year or two left. You probably want to go somewhere to compete. But if the Jets can bring him back and then draft a guy, I absolutely do that. Without question. Like, draft a developmental right tackle to learn right behind Morgan Moses. So, the resignings, Morgan Moses, top of the list, Brandon Echols, Ashtyn Davis, Chuck Clark, everybody else, let's rebuild this thing, because it does need rebuild. And how do we start rebuilding? Well, let's start with the offensive line. I would go out and get a depth guy. Because the Jets do lack depth on the offensive line. So like Dylan Raduns. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. I probably butchered it. But I'd go get him. He's serviceable. He can be a good rotation guy. He can play guard. He can play tackle. And that's kind of what you want when you're looking for backup on the offensive line, is how versatile are you? The guy, Dylan Raduns from Tennessee, he's listed as an offensive tackle, but he can play some guard if need be, if John Simpson or AVT go down. I think that's solid acquisition. Are you asking him to start? No. But he's a body. And sometimes, free agency, it's not all about finding starters. It's about filling out the rest of the 53 as well. Because 22 guys are going to start. Well, not excluding special teams. There's 22 starters, right? You have an entire 53-man roster to fill. So you do have to go out there and you have to get those pieces. You have to get your depth. So Dylan Raduns on the offensive line could be a solid depth piece, and then you go and you draft a guy. On the defensive line, I think you get a guy like DJ Jones, who can be, he comes from Denver, so he has that connection already. The front office with Muji is familiar with him. That's going to help. I'd expect to see a decent amount of like Detroit, Denver guys through free agency just because of the connections that the Jets have to those two teams and the players on them. So DJ Jones, put him right next to Quinn Williams and let him feast. I would still draft Mason Graham if he's there. Like DJ Jones, he underperformed on his big money deal, so I'm not going to give him a huge contract. I'm also not going to let this deter me from drafting a Mason Graham if he's there at 7. But this also sets you up for, if he's not there at 7, then you don't feel as bad, because there is still a decent player there next to Quinnen, and that's what we're looking for. Joe Douglas gutted the defensive line, and the John Franklin Myers trade looked worse and worse with every passing game. Shouldn't have happened. I'd love to have John Franklin Myers back. I just don't think he would come back. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. Like that's one I would consider. But DJ Jones, get him in the building. Let him be that guy next to Quinnen, and let's feast, baby. Sticking with the defense, I think if they do get a big money guy, it could be at safety, just because there is such a big need at safety. So you go and get Miami Dolphins safety, Javon Holland, already familiar with the conference, has played in the AFC East, so that's already going to help. I think he's going to be a good, solid safety for this team. And then, again, you go into the draft, and if you want to draft an Xavier Watson round 2, you can if he's there, but you don't have to overdraft a guy. Like, some of these signings, like, they're still going to need safety help with Javon Holland, but, like, you feel a little better with Javon Holland back there, and then Ashton Davis and Chuck Clark. You feel a little better. Not great. You don't feel great about it. But then you go and get maybe another Tier 2 free agent. Draft a guy. These free agent signings shouldn't deter the Jets from drafting anybody. Instead, it should help them make sure they are drafting best player available. Ultimately. Like, if there's a guy that they love, whoever they sign in free agency shouldn't be the reason they don't draft that guy. But it should be a reason they allow themselves to draft best player available instead of a team need. So like a Javon Holland, now you don't have to reach for a safety. If you like a guy, you can still take the guy. And you're probably going to have to double dip at safety. Because I'd imagine they just don't bring back Ashton Clark and Ashton Davis and Chuck Clark. I would, just again, for depth. But you get Javon Holland and you feel a little bit better about that secondary. Catching the ball, I mentioned the holes on the offensive side in the wide receiver room. So you're going to have to, you're not going to get a Chris Godwin, I don't think. You're not trading for T. Higgins, so really the tier 2 guys is who you're going after. So those are Tim Patrick, who already has familiarity with this coaching staff. The offensive coordinator, Tanner Engstrand, worked with Tim Patrick in Detroit. He's going to be able to come over, help install the new offensive scheme to the players. Like, he's going to be able to work with Engstrand, and he's going to be that guy that helps Engstrand paint his vision for the offense, just because he already has a familiarity. So I think Tim Patrick, he'll be solid. It's just durability is the biggest concern for him. And then the other wide receiver, Dyami Brown. Aaron Glenn wants speed on this team, and Dyami Brown is a speed demon. He's quick. He's fast. And you need to have a guy that you can just send to go get goal with those go balls. And I think Dyami Brown can be a solid depth piece. And again, you look, the wide receiver room, if this plays out with the Jets cutting bait with Davante Adams and Allen Lazard, and then getting Tim Patrick and Dyami Brown, like, the wide receiver room is Garrett Wilson, Tim Patrick, Dyami Brown, Malachi Corley, and Xavier Gibson. So again, does not prevent you from taking a guy like a Tet McMillan in round 1. Or it doesn't prevent you from taking a guy that you like maybe in round 2. It doesn't. But it does give you a little bit of a better feeling of, all right, now we don't have to reach. We don't have to overspend. I would still try getting a bigger upgrade at wide receiver if you can. I just don't think the Jets are going to be in a position to do so. With all this being said, so this offseason plan that I've laid out, you add some wide receivers, you bring in Morgan Moses back, you add a depth piece on the offensive line. Offensively, the team looks okay. It's not a bottom-of-the-barrel offense. It could be a more fun offense than, say, the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'd take Garrett Wilson over George Pickens, especially when I'm already familiar with the guy, right? Right, Dylan? So, and then you look at the stable of running backs that the Jets have. The Jets want to be a run-heavy team. So Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, Isaiah Davis, that's a solid running back room. Offensive line looks good. It's a good spot for a guy like Justin Fields, who I've been saying he was, if you go back and listen to the quarterback prediction episode I recorded, which already I'm dead wrong on, because I never predicted the Seahawks actually trading Geno Smith. So I was wrong on that. But I don't think I'm going to be wrong on this. I do still think that Justin Fields is going to be the next quarterback for the New York Jets, for Gotham City. So I'm sticking with it. I'm sticking to my guns until the notification comes through and says that he has re-signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm going to continue telling myself he's going to be a Jet. And I'd love for him to be a Jet, especially in a run-heavy offense like what the Jets want to install. Tyrod Taylor's going to be a solid backup for him. The Jets could be a fun offense. Are they going to be the Bengals? No. But they could be fun. And that's why you need a guy like Dyami Brown that can help stretch the field and really help uncork what Justin Fields can do. Because I feel like teams that have utilized Justin Fields, like the Steelers, like the Bears, they lean way too much into his athleticism, into his running ability, that they forget he can throw. Like, go back and watch the Clemson game. Any of the 2 games against Clemson. But more specifically, the 2020-21 Clemson game. He had 2 beautiful rainbow passes.
4-man rush. Fields has time. Launches downfield. It's Olave. He's got a touchdown, Ohio State.
He can push the ball down the field. So you reunite him with Garrett Wilson, and that's going to make him happy. That's going to make both sides happy. That's going to help bring Garrett back, too. Get him extended. If you have Justin Fields here. You have Dyami Brown stretching the field. You have Tim Patrick, a reliable receiver. Now we're kind of cooking. So, to kind of recap everything, Jets cut Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, Alan Lazard, C.J. Mosley, Greg Zuerlein, Michael Clemens. They bring back Brandon Echols, Ashton Davis, Chuck Clark, and most importantly, Morgan Moses. They then go out and sign DJ Jones, Dylan Raduns, Diami Brown, Javon Holland, Tim Patrick, and then a quarterback for 2025 is going to be Justin Fields. And that's my little free agency plan. We'll get draft content out later at some point. I will get a draft. I believe if I were to just go off the top of my head what I think the Jets are going to do, draft-wise, especially if they do this. You go out, you draft best player available at 7. If that is a Mason Graham, if that's a Ted McMillan, if that's a Tyler Warren, which in this scenario that I've outlined or I've laid out, Tyler Warren would become a need. Round 2, you can still take best defensive player. You could take, if you don't take Mason Graham, take the best defensive lineman because this is a deep defensive line class. Maybe an Xavier Watts if he's there. Round 3, if you didn't take a Tyler Warren round 1, you take a tight end there. Maybe you draft a developmental quarterback like a Kyler or Kyle McCord, Will Howard, maybe a Jackson Dart at some point. I wouldn't do that round 1. I don't think I would do that round 2. I'd consider Jackson Dart if he fell to 3, which could happen. So we'll see, but I wanted to take a little break from our draft content to get something out about the NFL offseason. And the free agency class, again, doesn't look to be all that great. Truthfully, it doesn't. It doesn't look... The first Monday through Thursday is going to be exciting. Once we get to Friday, everything's going to be about the draft again, if it isn't already by that point. Like, there'll be a couple signings here and there, but I think we'll know where Justin Fields goes, where Sam Darnold goes. Most of these big free agents will have an answer on their next team by Wednesday, I'd imagine. Like, I think Justin Fields will find out Tuesday. I don't know if we'll see that Monday. Tuesday, I think we'll have some sort of resolution to what happens with Justin Fields. I'll have my annual tweet 5 minutes after the start of free agency of, oh no, nobody's doing anything, or the Jets suck because they haven't done anything yet. Like, I'll get something like that out. I expect the Commanders to be the most active team in free agency. They're going to try getting an edge. They tried hard to get Myles Garrett. I think they're going to get Trey Hendrickson from the Bengals. That's my prediction as I'm making here at 4:31 Eastern Time on March 3rd. I think the Commanders are going to get Trey Hendrickson. The Commanders are going to be aggressive. They have a young quarterback that they made it to the NFC title game with. They have a ton of money to spend. They're going to spend. They're going to spend while Jaden Daniels is on his rookie contract, as they should. The Patriots are going to spend. I'm curious to see how the quarterback dominoes fall. Like, what happens first? Do we get a Justin Fields decision? Is it Sam Darnold? Is it Aaron Rodgers? Like, what's the next quarterback domino to fall? And I still think the next one that needs to fall is the Steelers' decision on their two guys. If they're bringing any of them back, if either of the two, which one they bring back. And we'll see from there. But it's going to be an interesting next couple days. It's going to be stressful a couple hours for some. I know Dylan is stressing like hell over what's going on with Justin Fields and that Steelers quarterback decision. I'm excited. I'm excited for free agency because, honestly, I'm not stressed about what happens. Whatever happens, happens at this point. So, with that being said, let's go reclaim our offseason championship. Let's have some fun this week. Let's get overhyped about some guys that are getting way more money than they probably deserve, but they just hit free agency, so they, will blow out the market. And then we'll get back into our regular scheduled draft content. So, stay tuned to feed at Party Chat Sports. Make sure you're following on TikTok, on YouTube. wherever you get your podcasts, and keep up to date with everything going on our Twitter. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell anyone you know that loves sports as much as we do, specifically football. And now that we're getting into draft season, if you want our draft takes, if you think other people would enjoy our draft takes, or watching, listening, make sure you refer them to Party Chat Sports. Until next time, let's see what happens with tampering. JTS. Peace.